Hey there. In this video, I'm going to show you how to install and use PyEnv on your machine. Before I go ahead and show you how to install and use PyEnv, I'm going to explain a bit about what PyEnv is and what it's useful for. PyEnv is a tool that you can use to easily install and switch between different versions of Python on your development machine. The reason you might want to do this is because if you are a freelance software developer like myself, you may work on many different projects and for many different clients in quite a relatively short space of time. That means that you may be working on different projects that require different versions of Python. For example, I worked for a client previously about a year ago, and they were still using Python 2.6 on some of their projects. Now, this is because they had some legacy applications, and those legacy applications had not yet been ported to a newer version of Python. They were still using the old, outdated version of Python 2.6. Now I work for a new client, and fortunately, they use the latest version of Python 3. So it's useful for me to be able to switch to and from these versions of Python on my development machine. So let's go ahead and set up PyEnv on our machine here. Okay, so I have a Linux Mint desktop here. You can install Python, you can install PyEnv on Linux or Mac OS. Okay, so if you click the link in the resources of this video, it's going to take you over to the PyEnv GitHub page. This is basically the homepage for PyEnv, and we're going to scroll down. And what we're actually going to do first is we're going to click on the wiki link here. And in the wiki, we have an option called Common Build Problems. Now, the reason that I'm doing this first is because every time I've installed PyEnv, I've had to go through and install these dependencies first. Really, in my opinion, they should be in the installation documentation of PyEnv, but they're not, and it can be quite hard to debug the problems. So all I do when I'm installing a new PyEnv instance is I just go over to this requirements page under Common Build Problems, and I copy this list of requirements and make sure I have them all installed on the machine. So if you copy that, and again, if you're using Mac, then these are the requirements. So you just use brew to install this. It's just readline and XZ. If you're using Ubuntu or Debian like I am here, Linux Mint, which is a Debian-based operating system, then you need to install all of these dependencies. So let's go ahead and paste that into our terminal window, hit enter, and put in my password. Oops. Typed it wrong. There you go. And now it's going to go and install all of these requirements on the system. It should take just a few minutes to go and install them. And while that is installing, we're going to go back. We're going to go back to the PyEnv GitHub page, and we're going to go back to the home page. So click on the home page and scroll down to the installation section of the GitHub instructions here. And this basically tells us how to install PyEnv. If you're on Mac OS, then consider using Homebrew. But I think these steps that I'm going to show you for using the PyEnv installer should also work on a Mac. But I guess it's quicker and easier if you already have Homebrew set up to just use Homebrew. So feel free to do that if you're using Mac. I'm going to go over to the PyEnv installer, and I'm going to install it using this script that they provide in the PyEnv installer project. Okay, so we just need to wait for these dependencies to install. It's probably another minute or so left on that. It's just setting up and configuring the dependencies now, and it is complete. Another thing we want to make sure that we have installed before running this command is the curl application. Now, I'm pretty sure it's already installed on my machine, but if it is, just in case it's not installed on yours, you can type sudo apt-get install curl and hit enter. Yep, I was right, and it already is installed to its newest version on my machine, so I'm good to go and copy this line of code here, or this command, and paste it into my terminal window and hit enter. Now what this does is it downloads the installer script from the PyEnv project, and then it just runs it in our bash window. So it runs all the commands, which then presumably will go and download all the requirements and install PyEnv on our system. Okay, so that installation happens pretty quickly, and once it's done, it will give you this screen where it has warning, seems you still have not added PyEnv to your load path. Now this is because we need to add these lines here to our, like it says, we need to make sure that these are run each time our terminal window loads up. So the way that we do it is, it says here add it to the bash profile, but the bash profile doesn't exist on my system, so I'm going to add it to the bash RC file. The way you do that is you open up the bash RC file like this. So I'm going to use Atom to open it, but feel free to use VI or Nano or whatever your favorite editor is. And this just says from the home location, the squiggly line slash, then open up the .bash RC file. We're going to hit enter there, and it may take a minute or two for it to load up our Atom editor. This is actually why it's a lot quicker if you use VI or Nano. I just use Atom because it's kind of easier to see what's going on when demonstrating in the video. Now I'm going to close off the tree view here, and we want to scroll right to the bottom of our bash RC file and add a new line. And I'm going to start by adding a comment by typing the hash symbol, and the comment is going to be PyEnv configuration. This is just so I know that this block that we're going to be pasting in now is for the PyEnv configuration. So then you can paste these three lines in, this export, eval, and eval, and then you can make sure you save the file. So I'm going to push Control S, just make sure that your file is saved. Now what this does is it just runs these three commands each time we start a new bash session, or each time we load the terminal up. The bash RC file is the same on Mac and Linux, so you should be able to add it on your Mac as well in the same fashion. But this now means that PyEnv is configured. If we type PyEnv in the terminal, you're going to see that it tells us it's currently not installed. Now this is because this only runs when you first load bash. So because we updated this while we had our terminal window already open, we just need to close the terminal window and load it again, just so it opens up this, or just so it runs these commands. All right, now that it's done, if we type PyEnv again, it should give us a list of possible PyEnv commands, and this shows us that PyEnv has been installed on our machine correctly. Okay, so the two main things that you want to do with PyEnv is you want to install different versions of Python, and you want to set the default version that a system uses to one of the versions that you have installed. Okay, so the way you install new versions is first, we're going to list all the available versions that you can install through PyEnv, and we're going to do that by typing PyEnv install list with two hyphens before it. So it's the list switch, hit enter, and what this will do is it will list out all of the different versions of Python that are available on the system. You can see that there are loads of different variations and different versions of Python. So this is where the benefit of PyEnv comes in, because even if you had to just manually install one of these, it would be difficult because you'd have to locate the version, you'd have to download it, you may even have to build it from source. PyEnv does all of that for you. So let's locate the one that we want. Now, I like to use the latest version of Python, Python 3, but I don't like to use the development version because I only like to use the stable version. So the one that I always install is Python 3.6.2. Now this is the latest stable version of Python 3 at the time of recording this video. So all I'm going to do now is type, next we're going to install this version of Python, and we do that by typing PyEnv install 3.6.2. Obviously you could replace this with any version you like, and then hit enter. Now this can take some time because what it does is it downloads the version of Python from the python.org website. So it downloads the version that we need and it installs it. But when it installs it, it actually builds Python from source. So because it builds it from source, it's actually quite a lot of processing that it needs to do. It builds the whole Python, all the binaries and everything from source. And that's why we needed all of those dependencies installed before we started, because those dependencies that we installed from the PyEnv page, I'll just take you back there to show you, to refresh your memory. These dependencies under Wiki Common Build Problems, these dependencies, all of these are required for building source code from source. So this is all required for building, if you want to build Python from source, then you need to have all of these in. So that's why it takes quite a while to install these new versions. So I think we're going to cut the video there and then we're going to come back to it once this version of Python is installed. Okay, so now that the version of Python has been installed, we're going to go and run Python just to see which version it defaults to. So it currently defaults to Python 2.7.12, which is the version of Python installed by default when we install Linux Mint. We want to switch to Python 3, and we want to make sure that every time we run a script, it runs it using Python 3. The way that we do that is we need to set the Python version in the version file in the pyenv directory. So let's open up that file by typing atom squiggly line /dot pyenv /version. Now remember, it needs to be version singular, and this file doesn't already exist at the time of installing pyenv. We're going to be creating it right now. So I'm going to type that and then it's going to open it up here in the Atom editor. And all you do is you specify the version of Python you want to use as your default version. No spaces, no Python text or whatever, just 3.6.12, which is the version we installed. Save that, head back here, and now type Python again. And you see it will try and load that, but it says that this version is not installed because it's not 3.6.12. It's 3.6.2. You probably spotted that when I made the mistake. So let's just correct that, save that, and retype Python. And there you have it. It comes up with Python 3.6.2. Now, if you wanted to install another version of Python and you wanted to switch to that one, you just type pyenv install list, find the version that you want to install. I don't even know what a lot of these versions are. Miniconda. I've heard of Jython before, but I've never used it. But you just scroll up and you find the version that you want and you type Python install and that version, and then you just change this version file to the version you want to default to. So that's how you install and use pyenv on your system. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions or feedback or anything, please feel free to leave a comment in the video below, and please subscribe to my channel for updates and new videos and things like that. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.